and welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck. In this episode, Deepak Saini shares his transformative journey from dealing with significant health challenges to becoming a beacon of wellness. Deepak will discuss the importance of emotional control, the impact of parenting on children's mental health, and his approach to integrating mental and physical wellness. This conversation is essential for anyone looking to enhance their lifestyle and understand the deep connections between our mental state and overall health. So stay tuned for that.
According to the CDC in 2023, over 10 million teenagers reported experiencing persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 10 million. And it's not just teenagers. Over 51 million adults struggle with mental health challenges every single year. Parents, this isn't just statistics. It's our children. It's us. And it's a wake-up call. But here's the thing. Knowledge and awareness is a first step to change. Yet the most important knowledge, the kind that can truly transform lives, is rarely taught. It's not about memorizing facts or getting perfect grades. It's about learning how to train your mindset. At the Unstoppable Mindset Masterclass, we'll teach you and your family how to take control, how to overcome limiting beliefs, tackle financial stress, and rise above the challenges that hold you back. You will gain tools to build unshakable confidence, foster resilience and grit to handle life's toughest moments, and turn habits into rituals that drive lasting change. Imagine the relief of watching your teenager face life with hope instead of hopelessness. Imagine equipping them and yourself with the mindset to not just survive but thrive. Visit unstoppablemindsetmasterclass.com and register to take the first step towards your transformation.
Welcome back. Deepak Saini is a health and performance coach who has transformed his personal struggles into a mission to optimize mental, physical, and financial performance for his clients. With a background marred by corporate stress, an autoimmune disease, obesity, and a back injury, Deepak now uses his expertise to help others achieve their best selves. A father of two, international best-selling author, and passionate speaker, Deepak continues to explore cutting-edge health research to better serve his community. So let's welcome Deepak to the show. Welcome.
Hey, Chuck. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And health is a big topic for me too. I really been exploring that. So getting your expertise is going to be very beneficial. So let's kind of begin and have you kind of talk a little bit about, your early years, your formative years, just kind of some of that background information so we can get to know you a little bit, and then we can really get right into kind of the meat of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a CPA by first profession, or so professional accountant. That's what I went to school for. Spent 20 plus years in corporate finance, corporate accounting, that sort of thing. As you mentioned in the intro in my bio, I always struggled with my weight. I was always a chubby kid. I was morbidly obese as a teenager, 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I always struggled with an autoimmune condition, undiagnosed. When I was younger, they would say, bronchitis and all these sorts of things, sinus infections, all these things for years and years, even well into adulthood. I would be sick 3 to 4 times a year for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. That is a big chunk of your year where you're, coughing and sneezing and runny nose and all these sorts of things. But where it really came to a head for me was in 2014. I hurt my back, as you mentioned. My youngest daughter was a baby at the time. I had no flexion. I couldn't bend over at the waist. I couldn't pick up my daughter out of her crib. Not to mention all the other challenges like putting on your shoes and socks, getting in and out of a chair, including the toilet. So I like to say the Western medical system, kind of wasted 18 months of my health, run around through the system, ineffective treatments, misdiagnoses, etc. Took matters into my own hands to heal my back. That was my number one goal, so I could play with my kids. But in doing so, I also made some lifestyle changes. My autoimmune condition went into remission. I essentially really haven't been sick in like 9 years. And the last 60 of the 100 pounds I lost just melted away in months. So that was my aha moment that transformed my life to help others. And so I left the corporate world in 2018, and I've been working with people on their physical and mental health since then, so to improve themselves.
Yeah, we are really beginning to understand how deeply connected those are, right? The emotional and the physical, that they really aren't separable. And I recently got,
Not at all. It's all connected. It's all connected for sure. And people say like mental health, physical health. It's like no, your head is connected to your body. It's all one. It's all one thing, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I just got certified as a mental wellness coach through Marietta College, and a whole lot of that process involved a lot of the research that was been done with like our microbiome and how much the microbiome influences the mental health side of it. And I, of course, have often come from, the thinking side, right? When we get trapped in negative thoughts and all of that. And you talked about stress, right, in the corporate world and struggling with your weight and all of those factors. But it took a your pain moment. It sounded like, from what if I heard correctly, was with your daughter and the back injury and not really being able to kind of you know play with her and pick her up as being the key moment. Now, so that starts you down this health journey, and I'm a little bit curious about that journey because on your website you say something about ancestral knowledge. So how did that play in? Where's that play in on this journey of really trying to figure out health and begin to make changes in your own life?
Absolutely. You just dropped a whole bunch of nuggets there, Chuck. So I just want to back. I'm going to answer a question. I just want to backtrack. So
Sure.
you just mentioned the microbiome. The more research I do into the microbiome, the more I work with my clients and I do advanced testing panels with my clients, the more I begin to realize the microbiome is key. It's even more important than I think we thought. And we're getting to understand this. Many people know the microbiome is our second brain, arguably maybe even our first brain. And again, neurotransmitters are developed in our gut, in our microbiome. So serotonin and all the other neurotransmitters. So having a healthy microbiome is key. So I just wanted to address that. So to your actual question is, yeah, ancestral health. So I look at it two ways. So number one, from a very scientific point of view, as far as how we approach uh, being healthy and going forward. So again, things like fasting, meditation, all these things as humanity we've been doing for thousands, 5,000, 10,000 years. And now they've become back in the last 10, 15 years as like, oh, we should try these things. We should do these things. Like, no, we've always done them as a species. So really incorporating, best practices, things that, our ancestors have known for a long time are beneficial to us. Hot, cold therapy, all these type of things. Yeah, we got new fancy technologies and stuff to enhance it or even optimize it now. But these are things we've done for thousands of years. So incorporating that with my clients, as well as some of the cutting edge things that could be advanced supplementation, that could be all sorts of technologies that we can enhance. So that's the first way I look at ancestral. The second is for people who have trauma, and I don't throw that word around lightly. And again, of course, trauma is a spectrum. There's many clients that I work with when I work with them at the unconscious mind level that have inherited trauma, that ancestral trauma along with them, and we have to like work through that so that they can show up how they want to show up as for themselves in their businesses and of course with their families as well, and also help them break that pattern so that it doesn't carry on or limits or minimizes how much it carries on into their own children, which is again something very important for me with having two young girls myself.
I'm also a little curious in your own personal journey because I 100% agree with this ancestral idea about meditation, mindfulness, prayer, that those sort of spiritual practices, even you know the activity levels that our previous generations have compared to us. Um, the nutrition was different too. Like today, we tend to. There's Trevor Cache is a name that I've recently learned about. Have you ever heard of him?
I can't say that name's familiar now.
He's and I just his name was mentioned in another book I just read, but he's worked with a whole lot of like Olympic athletes and Olympic teams, and but he calls what he does cognitive nutrition, because a lot, he says, of what we do modern world compared to ancestrally is we, and I think part of it's the availability of food, but we use food as a drug, really. We will grab food, we'll rely on food for comfort. There's lots of psychological aspects on why we're reaching for food, and so what a lot of the work he does, besides what we grab for, which is another thing, but is to work on those thinking parts. And I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit just a minute ago with the unconscious mind.
I think I know where you're going here. This, so I'll use myself as an example. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't talk about. We could talk about my backstory. I didn't share this part, but there was an incident, an event, not an incident, an event, when I was about 18 months old. So I'll just high level it. So my parents were immigrants to North America. I was, they got married here. I was born, and then they ended up. We were staying with relatives, and they ended up moving to where I currently live, so that they could, kind of strike out on their own, find jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So they left me with my aunt and uncle when I was 18 months old for about 6 months while they sort of get settled, find jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So, nothing traumatic happened to me while I was staying with my aunt and uncle. But at a unconscious level, all the negative emotions of, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, all resulted back to that one incident of being of feeling abandoned or being left behind, even though it was a short period. So that was an event in my life, and I've had to work through that. But how does this manifest itself? So all the things going until I've done this work with myself recently on the unconscious mind. So much, it was so profound for me that I actually got trained in these modalities. But to your original comment, is that anything that any negative emotion that came up for me, again, any of those, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, any limiting belief, not good enough, unlovable, etc. Food was my comfort. Anytime I was into I like to call it my pit of despair, where I was, in a funk, if you will, when I needed to escape, food was my crutch, right? And so I was always reaching for the unhealthy things, and we can talk about how food has changed and agriculture has changed, and all the sugar and additives have been added over the last 70 years into foods. So that's a whole other topic altogether. But food was my comfort, was my crutch. So I totally get that train of thought, and that I have to break that cycle for myself. Now that doesn't mean I don't grab something for convenience sake here and there, but recognizing that these things that are triggers for us tend to often go back to something in our childhood, or again, even going back to even ancestral, perhaps.
Yeah. And I know you and I use similar psychological process in the work that we do, using timeline therapy and all, which is an incredibly powerful tool. Um, I've also been curious as part of my own journey in the going through the certification process too, and one of my mindset, right, that I've seen that on all kinds of levels, from health to performance for athletes, academics for students, and how everything's related. But like what we were just talking about here, in breaking some of those cycles, so there's no question what we put into ourselves, the nutrition, and trying to change that for sure. Trying to even use some supplements or other things to kind of help bring microbiome and other things back into balance. But part of my thing, and this is where I think I want you to comment or give your opinion on, is a lot of those, particularly change in nutritional habits and patterns, require behavioral change, which requires a change in mindset, which is why I always end up, focusing on that and starting with that, because ultimately, if that doesn't change, old habits, old patterns, old things will come back. Do you want to comment on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you see the same
No,
things?
I 100% agree, and I kind of see it in layers. So the most easiest layer, and nothing is easy. When we're talking about behavioral change and breaking patterns, nothing's easy. But let's call it, the maybe the easiest to tackle, but also the maybe least effective is, those habit changes, the very mindset things. Do something for 21 days, 28 days, whatever, to try and create a new healthy habit for you. And then taking it another level deeper, a little bit more challenging, but more lasting, again, is doing that type of work. We just have timeline therapy, NLP, hypnosis, et cetera, to really get to that root cause. So your unconscious mind is not actually craving those things, or is actually repelled by those things. I don't know about you, Chuck. Maybe you can share your own experience, but I'll use this for myself. Approximately, or about a year ago now, for someone who tries to eat as healthy as possible, for my own health, I could be someone who would make a big bowl of apple slices and celery and whatever, and then I would put, like, peanut butter on top of it. Just commercial peanut butter. I honestly don't like the healthy stuff. It separates. And you get all the
Yeah.
oil on top, and it's not appealing. And of course, commercial peanut butter. It's loaded with sugar and everything, but it's very palatable. It's very tasty. And I could literally, like, make myself sick eating my healthy apples and celery because I put so much peanut butter on it. And of course, peanuts are, for me anyway, are very inflammatory. It is for many people as well. And I literally make my stomach sick. And why do I keep doing this? So I actually used those techniques. I had a colleague work with me and broke that pattern, or that desire for my favorite type of peanut butter, at the unconscious mind level. And I haven't had peanut butter in nearly a year. I have no desire. It sits in the pantry. Nobody eats it. I look at it, and I just have no desire. I'm not repelled by it. I just have no desire. So, there's a lot of different things we can do, from more surface level to, again, a more ingrained, more deeper at our unconscious mind level. And for some people, I see this all the time. Maybe you do as well, Chuck. Uh, it tends to be more women than men, but because of something that happened in their past, they use food, whatever it might be, as a coping mechanism to put that armor, that shield around them. And quite often, again, not to generalize, quite often it's with women, and they keep on excess weight as a shield to protect them from something that their unconscious mind is trying to protect them from, that happened in the past, that they may or may not even realize consciously. So yeah, it's very in depth, and there's a lot of nuance to it for sure.
And I see that and have seen that over the years with teenagers. So again, part of my heart's with teenagers, and if we can interrupt patterns at that age level, it's fantastic, right? But you used a word just a moment ago, which I used earlier too, comfort foods, but comfort and getting into that habit, and how we, I think, and I say we culturally, and I've seen this so much with teenagers, use those comfort foods, the snack foods, those, you know, sweet foods, salty foods as comfort. And then it becomes kind of a cycle of, they put on weight, or uh, you know, they begin to not feel good about their appearance, and they kind of resort to the very cycle of eating patterns and things that kind of got them there, and it just begins to influence not just their physical health, but when they don't feel good about themselves, their confidence impacts their relationships, impacts their performance. And what I liked about what I've learned from you, or about you, in the short time that we've kind of had this contact with each other, is the understanding that, um, you said a minute ago, layers, right? The layers. Can you talk briefly about what you try to do with a client regarding those layers, and trying to lay them out for them too? Do they? I think lots of times they don't come to us understanding all the different connections and layers and how they've all impacted. Can you talk about that process at all, and what you kind of try to do to bring that awareness to the forefront?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Chuck. And we've all heard that adage, or at least people who are in sales, you know, um, sell them what they ask for, but give them what they actually need. So nobody comes to me and saying, "Hey, I need to work on my unconscious mind because I have these like patterns." They just know a symptom. And let me take a step back. Some people are not even aware of their symptoms. Once they become aware of their symptoms, then the person has to be like aware of a solution first, that they want to actually address that properly, and then what is a solution? A potential solution is working with someone like myself, or another practitioner, type of thing. So yeah, definitely, no one comes saying, "Hey, I need to work on my negative emotions, limiting beliefs." They might understand they have limiting beliefs, but it's really something like weight loss, or I can't, I procrastinate, or I can't make sales. I get scared picking up the phone, whatever the case may be. And again, we're both trained in this. Always start with timeline therapy. Get rid of those negative emotions, break those patterns, then the limiting beliefs, and now we can really address the thing that they want to. So even with my, I mentioned about the microbiome and robust testing with my health coaching clients. Again, we do that unconscious mind work first, so that anything we do after we have the test results and like, hey, you need to be increasing your supplementation here, you need to be eating more fat or more carbs, or whatever the case might be for that individual. And again, we're all individual. Uh, any habit change or protocol or implementation plan that we have for a client will be uh, adhered to so much better once we've done that inner game work. So again, no one really comes thinking they need that, but it's actually the first thing I always work on, regardless of what a client comes for, whether it be straight up health, physical, mental, or even financial performance. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. That's always work that we do, because again, they don't even realize that they need it most of the time, and but it's actually the first thing that they need.
I appreciate that whole comment because one of the most difficult period of my life um, involved my wife, and she ended up passing away of cancer back in 2022, uh, and it was stress related. That's what triggered the cancer, no question in my mind. And you kind of said not being aware of symptoms, right? She certainly wasn't. I now, in hindsight, right? Hindsight's 2020. Should have been, I think, a little bit more aware. I knew she was feeling stressed. I thought she was trying to deal with it um, in better ways. But some of those symptoms that you're talking about were things like we were both pretty active, and we would run together. And she began to become more tired, too tired to meet me for our run. So the physical activity began to decline. Going back to some of the comfort foods. So all of a sudden the snacks began to change. Her weight gradually began to increase. And all these things, I again, it part of the work I had to do kind of on myself after is wasn't guilt, but some of the regret, and I had to let go of that so that you know I wouldn't then take all that grief and stuff after she passed, and guilt or the regret, and hold on to that. And my weight began to go up. Some of my physical activity, some of my habits began to like shift, and I recognized it early enough that it was like, and I got right back in those habits, and how important that was. But I think part of what my message is, and this is where I think I want you to kind of comment on, is trying to help people be aware of these symptoms and what they might be of a bigger underlying issue, whether it's they're teenagers in depression and anxiety, and maybe the weight issues, or other physical issues, or whether it's a spouse, a partner, and its impact on you, your own health. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those kinds of things that people might want to be on the lookout for? So,
Yeah,
knowledge is.
great question, Chuck. I'm going to answer it two ways, because I know you work a lot with teenagers and high school students, etc. I have a teenager and I have a preteen, so I want to talk about and I have two girls, so I want to talk about that first, and then I'll talk more about the typical what I see with my clients who are all adults. So yeah, certainly. I'm going to use a broad term of mental health, right? Obviously, you change schools, you go from elementary to junior high, and then junior high to high school, et cetera. Those are transition periods for both boys and girls. Maybe it's a little bit more even challenging for girls. Of course, there's hormonal things, there's puberty, et cetera. So I'll just speak from personal experience. My older daughter, she certainly went through this phase where her personality changed, how she dressed, who she was hanging out with, her old new friends, et cetera. And we kind of had my wife and I both kind of the space, and like it's an experimentation, nothing terrible is happening, but we really want to stay on top of the social media. Well, our kids don't are not on social media, but even just like devices, just playing video games or watching YouTube or whatever kind of media they are consuming. Just trying to be mindful of that. My older daughter, she kind of like worked herself out of it, and actually, if anything, she's kind of leaned into like my habits of like very healthy eating and making her own food, which is great. It's a good life skill, etc. Almost to the point where my wife sometimes like, do you think she's been a little too extreme with how healthy she's eating? And I said, well, maybe, but like again, it's through a phase, and let's let her work it herself out. Contrast that to my younger daughter, who's a preteen, and again, she changed just last year or earlier in the school year. So last year, she changed schools. She was in French immersion. We moved her back to English, and of course, puberty. So three kind of major events at one time. We've certainly seen a personality change with her. But again, she's we're trying to give that space and provide that space for her to figure it out herself within certain parameters and boundaries that we have as a family. But the other important part of that is also, and again, if I hadn't done that work myself to limit, my negative emotions, or at least how I react, if I think back to, my default, if you will, from years ago, that would have been a lot more challenging dealing with her. But I'm a lot more open, as well as I don't fly off the handle, so to speak. I have time to collect my thoughts before I respond, and that's made our relationship better and certainly not deteriorated it. So I just really want to talk about that as a personal example, with younger people in our own life. As far as working with adults, I see this all the time where again, I mentioned earlier, people have to be symptom aware, and then also wanting to make that change. I find a lot of time, especially in the health realm, they just have this little achy feeling, right? And their body's sending them signals, like maybe I'm not recovering, maybe I'm a runner, whatever the case may be. It used to take me 3 days to recover. Now it's taking me longer. I used to be able to eat X and like not put on the weight. Now the weight's just creeping up, and they have this little nagging feeling in their unconscious mind that something's not quite right. But again, many people don't take that action early enough. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I haven't been to the doctors in 3 years. I probably should go because I have this weird pain or something. And then they get this like, oh, like you're pre-diabetic or you're diabetic and you have high cholesterol. And it's like, oh, wow, like, in their face all of a sudden. And a lot of times people then come to me at that point where it's like, wow, we could have really prevented a lot of this if they were just more symptom aware earlier on. So again, that's part of my kind of education part of my mission to educate people to be aware of some of these symptoms. If you're just not feeling right, if you're having some of these things, let's look into it early, because prevention is a lot better than trying to like deal with something later.
You know, we used to hear the term, and still hear the term, but trust your gut sometimes. And now with this whole bit about microbiomes and the understanding of that, that really has a whole new level of understanding, because when you know, the instincts, your gut's trying to tell you that something's off. And to me, part of what I really emphasize in terms of habits, morning and evening rituals, with meditation and breath work and things like that, is also trying to get in touch with our intuition, our gut instincts, and listen to our body and try to, you know, understand some of those. So what you were just saying about something feels off, trust that, right? Like if something's feeling off, then try to figure out what's going on there, because as you said, those can be very early symptoms of something bigger. And if you can get things back in balance, then you can head off a more serious problem down the road. And that's, that's one of those things that, going back to a little talk about habits, why with teenagers, working with teenagers and their families, I'm so big on trying to help them uh, develop some of those. So nutrition habits, breath work, meditation, quiet moments, decluttering their life, right? All those things that can help manage stress. Now, it sounds like I'm going to kind of circle back to your own experience again, where you were saying stress in the corporate world and all that. At that time, you didn't have any of those in place, right? But it sounds like now you emphasize that even with your own family, right? Some of these things like meditation and obviously some changes in nutrition. Can you talk about what some of those essentials are that you think people would be really well served to build into their life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just touch back a little bit. I've been exercising for like ever, right? I was still, fat and obese and like exercise. So it's never just one thing. And certainly we're in the corporate world, like just the stress of the job and the deadlines. I think many people understand that, but also what was I putting in my body? That's a stressor, right? Not exercising or exercising too much. That is a stressor. What kind of light are we in? Are we getting sunlight? Are we grounding ourselves in the air? Like these all things are all stressors. So um, I just want to address that. So to your actual question is like, I think there's seven big areas that people really need to focus on for their health. So number one is what I like to call, sort of mindset and motivation. So again, these are the some of the habits we've talked about, practicing gratitude or any sort of spirituality practice, meditation or breath work. And of course, working on the unconscious mind, or even just like that, again, that more surface level type of things. Then, of course, there's the nutrition. What's the nutrition that's right for you, right? There's no one size fits all for anyone. Again, that's why I'm so big on testing. Kale, spinach, superfoods, right? Yeah, that's great for some people. That's not great for Deepak because of some of the compounds in it, and the list goes on and on. So I'm really big on like understanding your specific needs at a biological level. Of course, there's the movement piece, and it's not just strength training, it's not just cardio. There's balance work. There's making sure you recover properly. Again, hot cold therapy, getting a massage, all these sorts of things. If you have anything out of alignment, maybe seeing a chiropractor or other sort of professional. So there's that. Then there's of course there's our automatic nervous system. Again, overall our stress, how we respond to stress. So again, breath work falls in there, making sure we're sleeping properly. And again, there's no one size fits all. Different people respond to different stimulus when it comes to their sleep. So these things are all interrelated. And then, of course, there's the decisions that we do tend to make. I think everything's a risk reward. We make hundreds, if not thousands, of micro decisions every day that affect us in some way, and just be more conscious of that. And the decisions we make, are they actually in line with our long-term goals that we say we want? And of course, everyone, myself included, we sometimes we break those rules we have for ourselves, but at least we've made the decision to do that. But just being more aware of that. And then again, for those who are really committed or a little bit more advanced, there are going back to very advanced things, testing, supplementation, other sort of modalities, equipment, et cetera, that one can do. So you put all those together, and again, it sounds overwhelming, all these areas, but like pick one or two if you're just starting out. But I just really want to make the point that it's all interrelated. Everything relates to each other. So at some point down the road, you have to incorporate all of these things. You can't just focus on nutrition. You can't just focus on movement. You can't just focus on the mindset or habits. You can't just focus on getting better sleep. Uh, Find your weak point, work on that, and then start to layer in all the other things. Because again, like we said right at the top our body is like one whole thing. Our system, energetically, chemically, physically, everything's all connected, and we have to work on all of them at some point.
Yeah, thank you for that. So another question for you, kind of related to all this, as we talk about some of what you and I've been just talking about, we talk about on an individual level, but yet, especially in a family, there's those dynamics. But even beyond the family, I've mentioned this study before to other people in other conversations, a Framingham study, which was done, Framingham, Massachusetts. I think it was Harvard who was, putting it together. But they were looking. I think the initial study was all about heart disease and heart rate, and other people have gone back and looked at data, and what they found was that emotions spread. They're contagious, positive or negative. Negative had more power behind this spread. That might not really be the right word, uh, but they would spread beyond an inner circle group. So, like my inner circle, if I'm really in a you know negative mood, that can impact the people around me, and then it impacts that level's inner circle, and sometimes one more level out. And again, negative emotions were more powerful than positive, but also the negative emotions were spread by women. So the women were much more influential in their inner circle, and then spreading out beyond that than men were. So I've been really interested by that on many levels. But if you think of family dynamics, and you're working with one person, so like, you're working with a husband or a wife or what have you, and we're trying to get their issue under control. Do you try to do other things with the family? So, like, if you got to try, well, we really need to fix your nutrition, that's going to impact the family, right? If we need to kind of, help you incorporate some more exercise and making sure you find the time to do that, or your sleep habits, your emotions, all that kind of interplays. Do you try to address that, or is that can be kind of tricky sometimes, right? Trying to do that. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's occasions when a husband and wife team will work with me together. Of course, I actually work with them separately, even though they're together. But more often than not, it is one. It's either the husband or the wife. Um, but I always, again, in the intake and at the very upfront, is like, who does the cooking? Okay, like I'm working. I'm just gonna make something up. I'm working with a husband, but his wife does most of the cooking. Okay, great. So while I'm not necessarily talking to her, sometimes they do come in for like a couple sessions in conjunction with their husband early on. And this, again, just trying to make some of those simple changes. Like, okay, what is a common thing you make, and you maybe use vegetable cooking oil. Hey, could we substitute that with olive oil or coconut oil? So again, try as best as possible, and as much as the partner is committed to be involved in the process, to make those changes. Again, maybe it's something like, hey, we sit on the couch and watch TV to relax. Okay, well, I actually need you to start to move a little bit more. I just need you to go for a walk. Is it possible that you go for a walk and invite your spouse to go with you? And it's just a walk. It's not like we're running training for a marathon or anything like that. So that they can get their movement in, and it indirectly also will benefit the spouse or the children for that matter. And again, if there's children, it's like, how can we incorporate them in your movement? Can you play with the kids? What's the kids' favorite activity? Oh, they like playing soccer. Like, hey, can you be more active and participating with them, so that they can get the movement that they need for their individual goals, but still keep the family involved as best as possible. Because again, we don't want to isolate ourselves in trying to make changes to our lifestyle, to our health, etc., at the exclusion of the family. So as much as possible, try to build things like that. But again, it typically, there's odd cases where it's the both partners I'm working with, but I don't work with like the entire family unit of two parents and two kids or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of how I approach it.
yeah, I'm working with the adults. If we get that together, then it's going to kind of filter down to the kids. Now, you have two kids who are how old are they now?
Just about 14 and just about 11.
Okay, so you see their friends and all. I'm going to kind of bring this back to the mental health, what people are calling and what I've seen definitely since COVID, even before COVID, is a real increase in some anxiety, depression, hopelessness, sadness, all these things. Do you see that with your teenagers and their friend groups?
That's a great question. I would say definitely during COVID, when the schools were closed, you were online, you weren't seeing your friends, activities weren't happening, or at least in-person activities, whatever they may have been. Definitely saw that, both with my own kids, and my nieces and nephews, and their friend groups. As we're past COVID now, and as my kids have gotten older, my nieces and nephews have gotten a little bit older, and they're back to activities and doing things in person. I would say that overall, generally, that has improved. I would say back to normal. But now they're a little bit older, so they're getting into more of that peer pressure type of things. Especially my older daughter, who's she's not dating yet, but she'll be moving into high school next year, so that's going to come into play, and how I have to look and appearance and that sort of thing. So thus far, my daughter's pretty much how would I say, she kind of has her own path. It's like this is what's important to me. Again, the healthy eating and doing her exercise and her Pilates and being healthy. And so I have to say, I haven't personally seen that with the friend group. I mean, there's always a little, at that age, particularly with girls, about maybe the gossiping and so did this and whatever. And I think that's always been there. The only thing that's really changed, and wasn't there when I was a kid, of course, is social media and everyone having a
Yeah,
phone. Right, like before you had to like literally dial someone, and now everyone has, not everyone, but most kids nowadays have access to devices. So again, I think it's really important for parents to monitor those things, have certain boundaries and rules. Example, in our house, when our kids go to bed, devices get are in mom and dad's room. They're turned off. They're in airplane mode, and so they can't stay up late doing all sorts of things. But to answer your question, Chuck, I haven't quite seen that yet. I think we're there's the normal things I think we've always had. I haven't seen an increase, and maybe we're just blessed that we haven't had any really negative effects of those types of sorts in our household or in my like with my nieces or nephews yet.
yeah. My kids are young adults now, but my wife and I were fortunate in the friend groups that they had, and we were just talking about how emotions can go within your circles, and my kids were all involved in sports. They were active. There's some of those typical high school pressures too with sports and the exposure to drinking and things like that are you know out there for all the teenagers as they go through. But they hung around the right people, I guess, so that pressures were different. I don't think that they ever and COVID hit when my oldest was in college. My youngest was just about to enter college, so they were out of high school just as COVID hit. So we missed that end of it. My wife and I were both in public schools then, and we definitely saw, and the population I was working in with public schools definitely saw uptick in COVID and right after with stress, with anxiety, with just there's no even that kind of hopelessness, doom, gloom kind of thinking. And as we were coming back into school, and one of the things I started really making sure we did with our students in the program I had was starting each block of the day out just 3 minutes of box breathing. Just let's.
I love that. I think that should be part of the curriculum, honestly, everywhere.
I well, so I was gonna ask you that because something simple like that, which yeah, a lot of teachers feel, oh, got to get so much in, and I only have 50 minutes or hour or whatever the blocks are at their school system, and I'm like, you know what? They are so much more productive after just taking those 3 minutes to start the class out. That it's not a loss of time; it's a time saver, and it. I saw it. The kids I had began to kind of joke a little with little smirks on the face. Oh, we got to do breathing again. But you know what? As soon as we all sat down in our circle and went through it, not they were, even if they weren't necessarily doing the breathing, they were sitting quietly, contemplating, calming themselves down, and what a difference! What a
No,
difference!
absolutely. I think that's fantastic, and I think in line with that, depending on where kids go to school and what district and that sort of thing, at some point like gym's no longer mandatory, and I think physical movement and whatever that looks like is important, right, all the way through. Like, I mean, all the way till you're 99, right? But I think taking that out of schools is a mistake, and I think having implementing whatever that looks like, some mindfulness or breathing or stretching or yoga or something like that is super important in the school, if not every class, like you said, every block, but at least once during the day. Another thing I want to point out, and we might not have time to delve into this, but I think when everyone, let's say you have a class of 30 and everyone's settled and they're doing the box breathing, and maybe even some of them aren't, you're harmonizing everyone's energy as well, right? So someone's on some medication for whatever, someone had only junk food to eat, somebody ate really healthy, et cetera. So they're all their energy levels, mitochondrial, gut microbiome, et cetera. But on an energetic point of view, we kind of harmonize the entire class when you do that type of work. And I think that just makes it better. Again, like you said, more productive, even if you took 3 or 5 minutes from the block away, but the rest of the time would be more productive for the students and for the teacher as well.
Yeah, I noticed with myself with the once I started that habit a number of years ago with box breathing, and I was always a highly competitive individual, and just uh, what that did for me was we talk about with athletes. I talk about athletes all the time. You hear it a lot, slowing the game down. But what box breathing did was slowed my breathing, my normal breathing pace down. It slowed me down. It slowed my day down. I wasn't as quick to react emotionally to something. And there's no question in my mind it was the breathing practice along with more regular meditation and mindfulness. It yeah harmonizes my energy, and I it definitely influences the people around me too. I don't have a doubt about that.
Yeah. Chuck, I want to share this with you. So I mentioned earlier about doing some of that inner game work, at the unconscious mind level for myself, a little over a year ago. That really helped me, not break out of my what was had been my default, right? So, but prior to that work, I've been doing meditation for many years. But prior to doing that work, my wife would be able to tell. She's like, I'd be getting a little agitated, maybe around dinner or in the evening, and or what have you, and she'd be like, "You haven't meditated yet today, have you?" I was like, that was like the signal, like, yeah, I'm getting a little antsy, I'm getting a little on edge. Like, yep, no, I haven't. You're right, and I would go do that, and like, exactly like you said, just doing, my meditation, which involves breath work as well. You know, um, just make me more settled, more calm, more conscientious of thought and how I present to myself to others, how I react with others. So very simple thing. Again, we've been doing for 10,000 years or longer. That I would highly recommend if you're not already doing it to pick that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are kind of near the end of our time, and I can keep talking with you because the
Oh, I feel like we could go on tangents on a lot of things we talk about for another hour each. So, but
yeah, no question, and health, mental health, and physical health. You know, it's so important because it impacts so many different things that have such value. There was another Harvard study, the longest study on happiness. It's been going on for, I think now they're in like the third generation of people that they started this study for. But the number one factor in happiness was the quality of your relationships. Well, I've thought about that because when you begin to break some of that down, a lot of your your mindset issues, your ability to deal with stress, a lot of those things will impact the relationships, particularly those closest to you, right? If you aren't handling it well, lots of times, you don't react as well to them. You can be easily all those things that can begin to eat away at a relationship can come right back to the mindset and our mental health and our physical health and all of that. And it's like, we've said it repeatedly during this hour or how long we've been talking now about the how it all impacts one thing or another. Um,
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck. I think you hit it on the head, and I did mention earlier when I was talking about those 7 steps, sort of the mindset and motivation. I include relationships in there. You need strong relationships. It is a longevity um, tactic to have strong relationships, and that might mean also removing yourself from relationships that don't serve you. And again, those could be your intimate ones, your family, friend groups, and again, I also take that a step further to like what are the groups and organizations that no longer serve you? Maybe they did at one point, but they no longer do. How many people are a part of a Facebook group or a club or something where you're just going through the motions now, but it doesn't mean to you what it did before? You got to make the hard decision and get out. Yeah. So our personal relationships and the happiness that they bring or the stress that they bring completely impact our longevity at a physiological level for sure. And then the other point I just want to really quickly make is again, we have stressors. I mentioned this earlier from all over our work stress. The food we eat it can cause us stress if it's not right for us, if we're not sleeping well, right? So we bring those stressors on a daily basis with us, and then our other, our partner, our spouse, friend, whatever, coworker brings their stressors, and then we come together and we have a conflict, however serious it may be. But I also like take a step back. Like it's people think it's like he said this, that, they didn't finish their work, they didn't do the dishes, whatever. But it's like it's not that simple. It's all the other things at a physiological level that are stressing us and all the things that are affecting them. And we got to get to those root causes because then it'll go to that higher level of like, conscientiousness and respect and for each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me. If people want to get in touch with you, is Deepak Saini Health? Is that .com, right? Is that the web?
DeepakSaniHealth.com. You can find me on the socials with, again, at Deepak Saini Health or at DSaini Health. And I think we have a gift. Do we have a gift for the audience as well, Chuck? I can't remember.
Please, yes. You said
I,
you.
I, I have a guide. So I love, we talked a lot about a couple modalities very briefly in the
Yeah,
context of our larger conversation. So I have a free guide I'd love to give the audience debunking 5 personal development myths. So we'll put the link in the show note. It's deepaksanihealth.com/debunking. But yeah, we'll put the link there. And yeah, I'd love for you to check it out. And maybe there's something you recognize in that is maybe not serving you, and maybe there's some changes you can choose to make. So I'd love for you to download that, and learn a little bit more about what I'm about.
well, thank you. And all of you out there, I obviously we've talked about this on other shows and all. What Deepak Sane shared there about your health and some of those root cause kind of things. Trust in your gut. If things don't feel right, if something feels off, find some help. Look for some help. If things don't seem right with your teenager, try to find some help. Lots of times you just need somebody, uh, different set of eyes with a different perspective to help you identify exactly what's going on. So definitely encourage you to do that. I often talk about this whole idea of the mindset of a champion, and again, in our conversation today, talk about some of these root causes, and the metaphor I've used with excavating the ground before you build something or weeding the garden is totally applicable to this conversation we had. We got to dig some of that stuff out, let it go, and then the implications for all the other areas of your life can be quite profound, and they uh, then you can start building all the different mindsets that fit into the different areas of our life. I would strongly encourage, particularly parents of middle school, high school students, full curriculum on mindset, offer very special extra off by anybody who has been watching my show. All you need to do is contact me through going to coachchuck360.com, coachchuck360.com, the contact me section there, and send me a text with your first name, last name, best email. And if you're interested in learning more about that entire curriculum, and particularly if you're a homeschooler, how that would tie in, just put in education or homeschooling, and I'll be sure to give you a free gift that's covering all that and a special bonus. And we'll get onto a strategy call as well to kind of discuss all that and how that plays in. So I would encourage you to do that. Again, it's coachchuck360.com. And until the next time, find joy and go out and live life to the fullest.